First, this is a slightly reformatted hearing compared to prior years. Thanks to input from staff and I believe from board through some meetings we've been having with practically all of the jurisdictions that TSCC serves. Thank you. So we hope it works well. If it doesn't, or if it does, we'd like some feedback. We'll check in with you sometime after the hearing and see how that goes. So I call to order the annual TriMet budget hearing. The hearing is conducted by the Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission as a service to TriMet and to the public. The purpose of the hearing is to promote public discussion of the budget. The budgets of local governments in Oregon are prepared by district staff and reviewed 3 times: the district's chief executive, the district's budget committee, and the district's governing board. At any step in the process, the reviewing body has the option and the responsibility to modify the budget as it sees fit. The Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission holds this hearing prior to the governing body's consideration and adoption of the budget. The Commission intends that this discussion will promote thoughtful consideration of this and future budget issues. TriMet will make the first presentation this morning, then I'll ask our staff to summarize the budget for us, and then we would like to discuss the budget with you. Following discussion, we'll take testimony from the public, and there is a sign-up sheet, I believe. Is that correct, Tony? In the back of the room. So if you're here and wish to, obviously if you're here, you heard that. But if you, you know, this is only my 3rd cup of coffee, and the first one I think it might have been decaf. But at any rate, if you do wish to speak, please be sure to sign up. So with that, I'd like to introduce the Commission. I'm Terry McCall, the Chair. This is my last year on the Commission. It's always been a pleasure being here. Gulgan
Mercereau.
Steve Nance.
Brendan Watkins.
And I believe that we'll have Commissioner David Berriger joining us along the way pretty soon. And then staff, please.
My name is Craig Gibbons. I'm the Executive Director.
Tony Betchard, staff.
And then if the district would please make introductions.
Well, good morning. I'm Bruce Warner. I'm the chair of the TriMet Board of Directors, and I'll have the individual board members introduce themselves here.
Craig Crossan with the board.
And Travis Stovall with the board.
Good. And I would point out that Dr. T. Allen Bethel, I suspect, will be here shortly, and we do have 2 members that are unable to attend today.
She and David must be having coffee.
That could be.
I'm Shelley Devine. I'm General Counsel for TriMet.
I'm Neil McFarland, TriMet General Manager.
Dee Brookshire, CFO. Nancy Young, Director of Budget and Grants.
Good morning, Bob Nelson, Deputy General Manager, TriMet.
And Chris Tucker, Director of Revenue Operations.
Very good, thank you. So, Chair Warner, would you please begin?
I will. Thank you very much. And good morning to you, Chair McCall, and the rest of you, and thank you for coming today. We introduced ourselves, and I just take a moment to provide you a few brief remarks about our fiscal year 2016 budget. I, along with the rest of the board, are proud to present to you and the community a proposed budget that really focuses on a few things. Expanding service is a big one. Providing more connections, in other words, continuing our efforts to improve service and provide additional service, and increasing transit options for the region, and we hope to do more of that in the future. TriMet is looking to continue in its positive momentum, which is after we've emerged from this great recession, as we call it, working through and ratifying a new union contract has been very critical, and making needed investments to a maturing system have also been a priority. I think this budget helps keep TriMet on a positive path. It will allow the agency to continue to allocate funds for service expansion and service system reliability, which is critical. I think we talked last year about the board's fund balance policy and pension fund policies. This budget reflects that direction. It also fits within the framework of our strategic financial plan that the board authored and approved earlier last year. And one of the main priorities in this budget includes the completion, the safety certification, and the opening of the MAX Orange Line, which will open on September 12th, and hopefully you'll be able to join us for that. This is rapidly building excitement in the community and will be a major milestone for the agency. And TriMet has also plans in this budget to fully restoring a frequent service network I think you were aware that we had to cut that back during the recessionary time, and we're pleased that this budget will bring us back to the level we were before. So those are some of the real key things I just wanted you to understand from a high level that are important. So I want to turn it over to TriMet's General Manager, Neil McFarland, to walk you through a couple details, if that's acceptable to you to look at.
So Commissioners, good morning. I just wanted to go over a few additional fine points in addition to the general direction that Board President Warner noted. The $505 million budget will actually see about a 2% increase in bus service, and that will mean, as was noted, the restoration fully of our frequent service line, as well as additional service for overcrowded lines, as well as additional time built into certain lines that need that to remain as reliable in terms of the schedules. I'd also note that this restoration of frequent service, this is the last step. This has been a really big push for TriMet over about the last 18 months as we've taken every opportunity we can to squeeze out additional revenue and additional support for that additional service. And I would also just note to you that ridership has responded quite positively to that service. When we think about our frequent service lines, those are the 12 lines that really radiate from downtown, but also serve very high-use corridors like 82nd and Fremont in Alberta in the northeast area. Those 12 busiest lines have shown consistent month-over-month ridership gains, and so, and as a matter of fact, overall, our system is showing more months than not growth in ridership as well. So I think that's really good news for our riders, that we continue to really take care of that product and really continue to add service to that really important product that we offer. I'd also note that MAX service will be increasing about 15% overall. That, of course, is largely due to the Orange Line, but also to the restoration of frequent service along max frequencies to frequent service levels in all the existing corridors, and that's primarily what remains is some of the weekend hours that will be added back in this budget. I'd also just note that we are continuing our accelerated bus replacement program. By the end of 2016, we'll have replaced 326 of our 600 bus fleet, and we will be at our goal of 8 years age average. And at that point in time, we believe we can begin to ramp down a little bit, but still, if you begin to look at that, it's about 40 buses a year we'll still need to replace to keep up with that standard over essentially forever. I'd also note that safety improvements are another element of the budget that we continue to focus on. We'll be completing pedestrian crossing improvements for a number of locations in Gresham and elsewhere along the Blue Line, where frankly we see pretty stunning new developments. Think about the 7th Avenue station in the Lloyd District with additional 800 units and another rumor of another 1,000 to follow. So that obviously changes and increases pedestrian traffic in the vicinity, and our system has to respond to those land use changes over time. We're also finishing our two-year multi-year program, year 2 of a multi-year program to upgrade our CCTV system to fully digital. And we have that replacement work underway as well. And we'll be finishing the improvement of our West commuter rail positive train control. That's upgrading our train control system to actually meet the upgraded requirements of the Federal Railroad Administration, and so that work will be completed this year. Consistent with our renegotiated union contract, union employees will be receiving a 3% wage increase, and we budgeted the same for non-union employees, and the budget allows for these adjustments. Regarding fares, I would just note for the 4th year in a row, we won't be increasing adult fares. However, we have proposed to the board an increase in the honored citizen fare. That has not been raised since 2010, was held at the current level of $1 in 2010, quite purposefully, given that we were phasing in an increase in the Lyft or paratransit fare at the time. And so it was our recommendation that it was time to come back to that piece of business. And so that's a really quick overview. Again, I think the board president really noted our budget really focuses on service, it's on safety, and generally keeping our state of good repair where it needs to be for the purposes of reliability and safety. And with that, we turn it back to you.
Very good. So, Craig, do you have some comments?
I do have some comments. They've all just been stated. But I'd like to talk a little bit then about the budget itself and what it represents in our eyes. I came on the TSCC, onto TSCC a couple of years ago when there were many issues sort of swirling around TriMet, perceptions, issues, that sort of culminated in a legislative direction to the state to audit TriMet. It's sort of the apex of the situation. And my observation since then is that TriMet has worked very hard addressing all of the real or perceived problems that were floating around at that time. Momentum. This budget does try to capture the momentum of the changes, the increased services, the focus on safety and improvements, the expansion, the service to customers. That's what we found when we were looking through this budget. What neither Mr. Warner or McFarland said was that the Secretary of State's audit, all 23 issues have been addressed thoroughly. I'll also point out that TriMet was the first jurisdiction in our county to put their performance dashboard on their website. So the problem resolutions, the efforts of transparency, the service to the riders and the public, this budget just sort of captures that and keeps it all going. And to cap it all off, this is the new CFO's first budget, and from our perspective, it was seamless. From our perspective, gosh, it certainly was easy for you because it is just complete continuity and continuity. Continuity, yes. Those are my comments.
Very good.
Thank you for providing us with a very clear and a budget that was really, the numbers are connected to the mission objectives. That's one of the things we're really looking for. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments, Craig. When I looked at some of the information Craig sent, I was really brief with my words. I said, nice, clean budget, good to see. But really, he expanded on that nicely. So with the format that we're trying out today, our first, we'd like to have a discussion then about any questions or comments you may have about Craig's discussion or anything else. And then after that, we do have some follow-up questions. And whether we get to those or not is not as important as whether we have a good discussion. So if you have some extra comments or questions, please pose them.
I don't think we have any comments, but I want to thank you for your analysis, because I think you're right. The board and the staff have worked very hard to address the perceptions as well as any realities in terms of the things that were swirling, as you pointed out. I think that's a very good description of what was out there. I want to commend the staff for doing a marvelous job of putting together a budget, but also commend the board for really stepping up and providing some clear direction in terms of what we expected from the standpoint of fiscal goals and objectives for what this budget is meant to do, but also in terms of the priorities that you see in this budget. I think it is a good reflection of a lot of hard work over the last few years, And it wasn't easy at times, but I think it is very rewarding to be at this point in the budget and financial situation of TriMet. I want to also acknowledge the union, the Amalgamated Transit Union, for stepping up and really working with us in a partnership way. It wasn't easy, but we came up with an agreement that really is, I think one of your questions identifies, gave us a lot of stability and sustainability in our budget and allows us to really look forward to providing this region what's needed in terms of service, because they're expecting a lot, and we know we have a lot to do to get to that level of service. I'm sorry, look like you wanted to ask a question.
You remind me of the third part of this. One is priorities, the other is the budget, and the third part is the long-range financial forecast that you all put together. These all tie together, and that's really what we like to see. The union contract settlement fits in to that long-range plan. And that long-range plan, well, you can talk about it better than I can. It's stability.
Well, and it's knowing where we want to go and where we want to be and identifying that up front. And once you identify where you want to go and where you want to be, quite honestly, it becomes fairly easy to start building your annual budgets and implementing policies to get there. And that's, you were talking about how much this organization has done to address the issues. I joined the board the end of 2011, which was probably pretty close to the bottom of the trough there, and it was tough. It wasn't a totally pleasant exercise to come to board meetings once a month or twice a month. I will say, that with really hard work of staff, and I can't emphasize that enough, we've got a really good staff, and with Dee, and also we need to recognize Nancy, this is her first budget too, have stepped in and done a great job. But I think the board, this is a great board to work with. We have good discussions. We all kind of know where we want to go, but that really helps us to deal with these issues as they come up each day. So
You have a framework that you're working on.
Right.
From.
So that framework, I really look at Craig and his leadership of the Finance Committee in regards to the strategic financial plan. When Craig said this wasn't by accident that these things are coming together, it's not, because of the SFP, which we refer to it internally, is something that really guides the process. And it's looking at something that gives us guidelines, and not just us as board members as we provide leadership, but also the staff and the team. And that strategic financial plan was put together with a lot of input. The ATU was at the table as we were developing the strategic financial plan so we can get their input. A lot of community groups were invited to sit across the table and have a dialogue and a discussion as to the importance of each of those items and how those items of the strategic financial plan move into the budget. And we utilized the strategic financial plan to make sure that we did almost a test run of the budget and how things fit into that strategic financial plan. So Craig, what you're referencing, that framework sits there and allows us to have some continuity year to year as we begin to address what are the things that are going to be the priorities on the budget. And as you can see in this budget, we've got some pretty big investments, such as the e-fare program that's coming along. It's a $30 million program that basically actually allows us to save some significant cost. It is going to cost us something for the investment, but down the road we also have some significant savings. But it's not just about the savings. It's about enhancing the customer experience, which is something that's critical and important to the organization along those lines. So really, as we look at all the things that, Craig, you referenced, and we really do feel very privileged to have an opportunity to have the positive impact that we've had on the organization, along with the incredible staff and the incredible partners, such as the ATU and everybody else. But as we look at that, it's really something that gives us this overall guidance to say year in and year out, how are we doing compared to this financial plan that we've put together to give guidance over the years and provide for that consistency against the priorities that really not just the staff and the board has set out, but also the community that actually sat at the table with us. And I think that's incredibly important because it shows that you can't do this stuff inside of a vacuum. You've got to allow everybody to have part of the process so they do have a voice as we move forward to actually make things happen, such as we've seen here.
Yes.
Very good. Well, anything else? Let's move to a few questions, and then if something pops into your mind, just go ahead and ask along the way. So Commissioner Watkins, I believe you're going to start.
Yeah. So in TriMet's 2015-16 budget, as Mr. McFarland detailed, there's funding for new or restored service levels. Without going into detail of those particular items, could you please explain the changes in your revenue stream that have enabled these system-wide enhancements?
I'll handle that one, and Dee will backstop me, and she will break in if I start saying anything wrong. So, the restoration of service and improvements in this budget are really paid for by our last increase in the payroll tax rate. We were increasing that rate. If I get it right here, it's 0.1%, 1/10 of 1% over 10 years. January of 2014 was the last part of that increase, so that carries over our funds. I think really the big part of the payroll tax, though, is the improvement in the economy. Employment has really come back within this region, and that's flowed through the payroll tax to our budget, and that has allowed us to restore service and make these improvements. As we restore service, we're also generating more ridership. So there's increased fare revenue coming in also. And let's see, part of it also is our bus restoration. On that, we're really looking at some FTA grants we're getting, and also a revenue bond measure in this next fiscal year. That allows us to catch up our bus replacement program to where it should be. So, yeah. Dee, did I say it right?
You got it.
As I was doing my taxes this year, I wrote a small check to TriMet, and my wife asked me, why are we paying TriMet tax? We don't use it. So, and she's a very thoughtful person. I'm not criticizing. I'm not criticizing her. God forbid. Right. But it was a teaching moment. And I said, well, actually, we do use TriMet indirectly. And if it weren't for the dollars that flow to TriMet, the freeways might be more crowded. And admittedly, I'm not a very heavy TriMet direct user, but I'm a very heavy TriMet indirect user. So we do get value for it. And I didn't state it terribly articulately to her, but she got it. Oh, yeah, okay, now I get it. You've told me this before, haven't you?
Well, but it's a good point. I think people think, if I'm not on the bus, if I'm not on Max, I'm not using it. Right. But if you look at the role that transit plays in the local economy and helping people to get to employment and the contributions that they make to this region through their jobs and through their community activity and involvement, it's a really important piece of what makes this region work.
Very good. Commissioner Behringer.
Okay. Hello, I'm David Behringer. Last year, we were talking about you were increasing the transfer time from 2 hours to 2.5 hours. So this is kind of a follow-up question. What were the fiscal impacts for TriMet of extending the transfer time by 30 minutes?
I think first off, as a preface, I think it's important to note that we had this discussion about involving our stakeholders and working to see if we can find consensus. Not always, we can't always find consensus. It's interesting, because this is one that took a long time to get to, and actually the board was divided on this issue, as a matter of fact. But we did go ahead and increase the transfer time by half an hour, and the actual fiscal impact is not an increased cost, but it's a lost revenue of about $1.765 million per year. And we'll be monitoring that, obviously, over the year. Hard to understand exactly what that is, but that gives you an idea of what a half hour worth of time means. Yeah.
Wow, that's big.
Commissioner Nance, please.
Thank you. You've got a very big project coming along, one of your bigger capital outlay projects. You mentioned the e-fare project. Can someone give us a brief description of that and how the costs are viewed?
Certainly, I'll go ahead and take that since
Great.
I've already referenced it. The e-fare project is going to replace kind of an antiquated way of just collecting fares. As we've moved from, similar to airlines, you've gone from the paper tickets to various ways to operate, how we do fares and how we get on airplanes. Now you can do it with your cell phone. I'm pretty sure we'll be chipped, and all you got to do is walk onto the airplane. It automatically says if you're supposed to be there or not. Can't wait for that day. So basically, there's many of these e-fare systems already in place across the country and around the world. Some already within transit that are certainly being utilized these days. So this is a pretty significant project where we're working on platforms and buses and many of our assets that are out in the community to implement this new e-fare. It's not something that you can just turn the switch on and everything changes. It's a very, very big investment that we're making, and it's going to be something that gets done over multiple periods of years. We've already started the process, and I think we're going to start doing some of the work as of April 1st of this year, and then so a lot of that work's going to move through the end of 2016 with a full implementation by about 2017. But this really allows us to do some pretty incredible things. Again, it's not just for a better collection system, but it's also for the customer experience. One of the things that this will allow us to implement is a fare system that supports pricing caps. So right now, if I buy a monthly pass, I get the significant benefit of a discount over the daily fares. If I pay $5 a day, then over the month I'm paying $150. I believe our current monthly pass is about $100. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's $100. And so if you do those calculations, you save roughly $50 by doing a monthly pass. Well, not everybody has the benefit of doing that. And with the new system, we can actually cap. Once they get to $100, once they've spent $100 with their e-fare system, our system will recognize that and give them the benefit of having spent $100 in that monthly time frame. Wow. So there's a significant benefit for our customers, especially some of the ones that are challenged to be able to afford transit, who can't afford that $100 on a one-time basis. Now they get to get the benefit from that. So that's a significant component of it that really is looking at customer service and their ability to now walk onto one of our vehicles, one of our trains, and be able to utilize their electronic systems to buy fares and things of that sort, which just, again, really enhances the customer experience. It simplifies boarding process for both the customer, the rider, the stakeholder, and the folks who are operating, our incredible system. And then one of the major things I think that also this helps to address is it allows many of our riders the opportunity to not even have to utilize cash while utilizing the system. Now that's a benefit to many, and it may be something that is a challenge for some. So we'll still have opportunities for them to be able to use cash, both at the vending machines, also on the buses, and they'll have an opportunity to continue along in that regard. Again, this system is going to run us roughly about $30 million. That's the original estimate as we move forward. But it also allowed us to not have to make investments of about $10 million in new ticket vending machines, $20 million in new ticket vending machines, and another $10 million in new fare boxes that we were able to push out because we knew that the onset of this or the beginning of this new system was coming. We did invest about $7 million in refurbishing some of those systems during that time frame. So if you do the calculation, 30 million minus about 7 million, that's about 23 million that we're saving. So that's an investment of about $7 million. But it's going to be some significant savings also as we move forward because some of the cash collection operations and processes we currently have, we won't have to the level that we have going forward. So there will be some operational savings as we move forward, and some of those have already been identified, but we can't really identify all of them in the aggregate. But that's kind of a big overview of the significant project that we have moving forward. We have very I would say regular check-ins with the team. Chris is our head of this whole process, and we've got some great consultants that have done this before and great folks who are implementing this that are really helping us move this project and process along. So we feel very confident that we've been well informed and we're keeping right on top of this implementation.
2017.
Do you expect let's say, a revenue decrease from those customers who would be given that $100 cap that you described earlier in your comments, where they're having to pay upfront for each fare and at a certain point that's recognized. So is there a fare decrease expected there?
Well, I'm going to turn to Dee for that answer only because I'm sure if I say what I'm going to think I'm going to say, it may not be completely correct.
Well, we don't need to get really specific.
So actually understanding how the fares will fluctuate is one of the challenges of this type of a process. TriMet will be one of the first agencies in the country to go to capping, to a cap system, so everyone's going to be watching. We're expecting, while there may be a deflection initially in the revenues, that over time it's going to rebalance.
And it seems that if you have the large cost savings you have, you can absorb that. I would presume that financial impact would be well under the numbers you mentioned earlier. So sort of see how it goes and.
See how it goes. We'll
Yeah,
keep
but-
reporting back.
But, so that sort of goes back to the customer experience issue, which has some value.
Right.
Okay, very good.
I have more of a technical question on the e-fare program, which I know very little about, so I might be way off base here. But how does this relate to the already existing TriMet app? Is it built on similar architecture, or is it just completely independent of that?
Sure, I'll take that.
Yeah.
The existing app was designed for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
One was to introduce electronic payment to the region and to TriMet, so we could start shifting from paper-based fare systems. But that existing app is based on our current fare policies of 10 ride tickets and monthly passes. And it was really always designed to be an intermediate step, or kind of the first step into electronic fare. The new electronic fare is a comprehensive system that will include smart cards, contactless cards. It'll accept bank cards, and it'll accept Apple Pay and Google Wallet, that kind of thing. The existing mobile app is a flash pass, so you show it as you board and you can't tap it. So the long-term plan for that app is, as we roll out electronic fare, we move folks to this card system, that we will ramp down that flash pass on the app. So it'll wind down as everything winds up. There is some very promising technology that we're keeping an eye on, which would hopefully allow us to load that card onto the phone, and you'll be able to tap the phone and enjoy the fare capping, so that they can have that seamless experience. Passbook within the iPhone is one way that we think looks very promising to do that. So we hope to introduce this seamless transition over the next few years as that Flash Pass app ramps down.
Excellent, thank you.
I have one more.
Yes.
I heard mentioned that you're using some world-class consultants. Can I assume that you have benchmarked some other municipality, some other city here in the United States? And if so, who is that, and why are they best in class that you're benchmarking?
So we had a competitive procurement for the technical consultants, and we hired CH2M Hill. It's actually now CH2M. And they worked on some projects very similar to what we're doing. The first generation of systems were in the Bay Area, and they were key consultants on that project, as well as consultants in Los Angeles. But the closest system to what we're designing is in Chicago, which is a comprehensive fare system where 90% of their riders use their electronic fare system. And their key technical project manager was in Chicago on that project and now moved to Portland. So we've got a strong foothold of knowledge from that project, as well as CH2M Hill's Director of Project Management, who has informed many projects throughout the region. Something that's noteworthy is New York City, one of the largest, of course, in the nation, is leveraging our technical consultant team and looking at what we're doing in Portland to inform the project that they're doing in New York. And they're seeking the advice from our technical advisor. So I think we're really pleased with the team that we have from CH2M Hill.
Thank you.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the fare recovery from the WES and Lyft systems for a moment, if we could. So, in looking, Commissioners, if you want to see, it's on page 4 of the budget review. In looking at those numbers, it looks like the recovery dollars are pretty much in line with bus and light rail, but the recovery percentages are quite low because of the high cost of operating those two systems. So what are the total costs of operating each of the two systems, and what is being done to improve that recovery variance?
Is that assigned?
If you'd like,
If you can address it.
Stab at it between
Yeah.
Dee and I,
Sure.
but
Sure.
the first thing that I would tell you is that we actually don't think about fare recovery specifically line by line, because we operate a system that comprehensively needs to serve the region. And for example, the paratransit system is a very expensive system, but those who use it really need that in order to have a full life. That transportation service is absolutely lifeline for the people who are our clients on that system. So thinking about fare recovery in quite the same way just kind of doesn't fit. Overall, we know that our fare recovery is somewhere in the 25% range, and that will range anywhere from 50% on some of our max and frequent service lines to much less than that, as you see on our some of our other services. So we really don't think about that. But we have, again, starting in 2011, we began to ramp up the paratransit fare to be the adult all-zone fare. And that was an important move for us because I think it did help keep some trips off the system that perhaps could be joined together or chained together in a more efficient way from our users. So our users began to think a little bit more about how they use that service, and I think that was important. And that's one of the reasons, frankly, for a fare system is to make sure that people are really being thoughtful about the use of these services. And so since then, we've been able to actually keep Lyft growth in a small single digits, which has been very helpful to our budget. Because frankly, if you think back a few years, one of the questions you probably did ask us at the time, I don't recall, but is how can you sustain the kinds of growth we were seeing in the Lyft system? And frankly, we really couldn't at some of the earlier areas of growth. So I think that's been really important. The other thing that we've done with the Lyft system, the paratransit system, is established in-person reviews of eligibility, and I think that has also really helped make sure that those more expensive services are really targeted to those who need them the most. And so that's been, I think, a really important step as well. Regarding the West system, a little bit different. It's a fixed cost for the most part. There's not that much variable cost in operating the West system, in that the trains, the tracks, the maintenance, and at the service levels is that we certainly have right now that are relatively fixed given our agreement with the railroad. And so the answer to that is to get more riders to reduce the average cost per ride. And so we did see over the first few years of the Lyft system pretty rapid increase in ridership. We're up about 2,000 a day, I think, right now. We've seen a flattening of that and actually a slight reduction over the last year. I think may have something to do with gas prices and our competing mode right now. But that's something we're looking at very, very carefully and very cautiously in terms of what we need to do to really get more riders on that system, which will bring that average cost down.
Oh, good, thank you. Yeah, on the Lyft side, I fully understand that, and I sort of expected something along those lines to be the case. On West, it just sort of, when you look at the numbers, it appears that the West riders are getting a pretty good deal. Well, it's really because of these fixed costs, but.
We've heard that before.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have. I recall the history of the program, so, good. Okay, thank you. Let's see, Commissioner Merzrow, please. Did you have a,
great,
yeah, I didn't ask on that one.
I have a question about the State of Good Repairs program. How is that budget established, and are those funds earmarked for certain projects?
So, first of all, let me just note that the federal government, the Federal Transit Administration, our, if you will, cognizant agency, has really emphasized the state of good repair, and I think to a large extent because of the experiences they've seen with some of the older rail agencies in the country, you know, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, which have ran up literally billions and billions of dollars of deferred repairs required over a period of time. And so they're very rightly so putting a certain amount of, a great deal of emphasis on making sure that the newer systems don't fall in that same state of disrepair. And so in that regard, we have, and I would also note that Congress has recognized that by creating a particular grant program called the State of Good Repair that actually dedicates formula funds, and it dedicates it more heavily to rail-oriented systems because of the maintenance and repair efforts with that. So there is a particular grant program. There are a wide range of eligible uses. Our own internal priority has been to channel those funds directly back to the repair and rehabilitation of the rail system. A lot of people don't, this makes me feel very old, but the Banfield system will soon be 30 years old. And so that means that a number of the key physical improvements like tracks and switches and vehicles all need a certain level of investment in repair and replacement. Matter of fact, this last Sunday, we just had a bit of a shutdown at the 11th Avenue turnaround as we replaced a deteriorated rail. So those things will continue, and again, our effort on State of Good Repair is really to try to ramp up to what is absolutely needed related to keeping the system safe and reliable. Do you add a little bit more?
You covered it very well. State of Good Repair is a high priority for not only TriMet, but also, as Neil points out, the federal government. So FTA is expressing great interest in all agencies focusing on State of Good Repair and maintaining it. Our budget has about $18.5 million specifically from this particular funding source, and we're using every penny of it. Yeah.
I might note that one of the enhancements that you'll see in the future is we're beginning to implement a more refined asset management program where we actually go through a rating system of the physical inventory of our system, rate it, and then with a more detailed sort of schedule, program its replacement or rehabilitation or whatever it might call for. We currently have a very detailed capital improvement program that tells us, for example, when every roof in the system needs to be replaced. But this will take that down to another level of detail, and that will be work over the next really couple of years as we begin to enhance that. And I might also note that this budget is the first that reflects a little bit of a revamped capital improvement program process that we've done at TriMet, where we're actually involving the executive levels to help make the decisions and set the priorities over investments. And the goal with that was to raise the importance of the State of Good Repair to a higher level within the agency, but also make sure that every division and part of the agency owns the piece of work associated with getting those projects in place. So this will be a little bit of a change, and we'll see how this goes again over the next few years, but I expect some improvement in that regard.
Commissioner Behringer?
Okay. You were speaking about the Blue Line. We just had a question about the 30-year anniversary coming up. Is it still Renew the Blue, and do you still have plans to celebrate the line?
Yes, it is Renew the Blue, and we actually have a program which really focuses on the customer amenity stations and some of the safety improvements around the Blue Line. It's actually a multi-year program, and we're starting that almost as we speak, I believe. I'll ask Mr. Blocker referred to some of the details of it, but it is a multi-year program. We'll be going through those stations and bringing them up to standards related to lighting and access control and other improvements.
Yes, thank you. As the general manager said, the Renew the Blue is really a program of projects, some of which fall under our ongoing maintenance work, some of which fall under our capital program. So currently, we're already begun the work in a multi-phase process of updating the station areas. with a focus on safety and security. So the first thing we've done is we had to remove some trees in order to make the CCTV cameras work better. So that work has already been completed. The next step, which is currently ongoing, will be to modify the platforms to create fare zones. So we do that for both enhanced security and also in support of the e-fare program. Subsequent phases will then update the lighting on the platforms and the shelters, and again, with a focus both on renewals of the material, but also on safety and security. So you can look forward to those improvements happening over the next 4 or 5 years as we complete the Renew the Blue program.
I had commented during a phone meeting that I was on the train for the 30 years ago. Makes you feel old. And I remember as I'm standing there next to the governor's wife, she's sticking a cookie in my mouth. So I'm going to have to send a note to Governor Brown and ask for her husband to bring some pastries along. But I'll never forget. Anyway, it's hard to believe that it's 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Commissioner Merzrow.
You know, I think someone else might have signed up for that one.
Oh, excuse me.
Is that someone else?
So I'll just go ahead and
I can do it
start.
too.
Yeah, please,
Yeah, okay,
please, go
great.
ahead.
We understand that the Portland to Milwaukee line will be completed under budget. Can you tell us about that, how much the savings are, and whether the savings can be attributed to other projects?
Yeah, we don't have the exact number yet. We expect the savings will be between $5 and $40 million. The project is 55% federally funded, 45% local. So the feds, of course, will want to recover their share. We have requested some of that money back. In fact, we decided to go for the gold and tried to get enough money that we could restore the parking garage that was originally planned for the Tacoma Street stop. We didn't get it, unfortunately, which is very disappointing. But we did get some money the feds have committed to that'll allow us to do some more station improvement, shelters, and that kind of thing. As far as the local share, that really comes down to the language of the various intergovernmental agreements. So what will happen with that money? So we'll still sort that out. As you know, federal money is provided on a reimbursement basis, and so we have to wait till all the bills get in, and then we'll know the final number, and then we have to wait for the feds to give us the money. So we are also financing the federal share of this with grant anticipation notes or revenue bonds, and so the longer it takes to get the reimbursement, there's more interest costs, and that's why we're still a little bit loose about how much the exacts will be.
So I believe we've asked all the questions that we had in mind. We do have one person signed up for public testimony or public comment. So I believe the name is Chris sorry, there was a separation there. So there's a microphone there in front of you, Chris, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes if you would.
I will do that. I'm an avid user of Lyft and the paratransit system, and I've been speaking to a lot of people who are, and the concern is that with the honor system and Lyft, that there was some service taken away from that system at the time of the recession that has not been brought back up to date. And so the consensus out in the community seems to be, okay, you're asking for more fares to be increased. Can we then have you roll back some of the boundaries that were changed because of that? That's the big point that's being made around.
Okay, do you have some comment?
Well, let me just note that Chris is a member of our Committee on Accessible Transportation, and we do receive great input from that committee on a very regular basis, including most recently some controversial items like raising the honored citizen fare. And they give us both some recommendations on that and how to mitigate the unintended consequences of that. So we appreciate that service very much. I would also say that we did cut back some lines of the district during the recession. Not all of those have come back. I frankly don't expect all of them to come back because some of them were very low-performing routes. And recall that the paratransit system follows the guidelines of the Americans with Disabilities Act and then guidelines that the Federal Transit Administration has developed since then, which define a boundary around the routes that we do run that lift service needs to be provided in. So if we geographically reduce the lines out in areas of the district, then we similarly reduce the lift boundaries. I think one of the things, hope for the future, is that we can begin to expand service in many areas, which will expand that lift boundary. I'd also note that there are some other very innovative services going on in the district area. One that I like to point out, because I think it's a model for what we can do in many other outlying areas, is the service in Forest Grove called GroveLink. And this is developed, TriMet actually funds this through channeling some federal grants in that direction. But it is a shuttle service that serves lower density areas in Forest Grove, and it's a small bus run by Ride Connection, a nonprofit. So the cost per hour is much lower in terms of the provision of the service. Yet it's a very important link for the people who are using it, and we're finding particularly seniors very happy to use that service. It connects to the Line 57, which is one of our frequent service lines in downtown Hillsborough. So in that regard, downtown Forest Grove. So it provides sort of a complete package of transportation services within that community, together with the TriMet service. And we see that as a really desirable model for providing service in many parts of the region as well.
Mr. Walker, thank you for your comments. Yes, absolutely. So there being no other speakers, then we have concluded that portion. I want to thank the TriMet district and staff and board for an excellent budget and a good meeting. We need to close the hearing, but we're not quite done. It's just a formality. So the hearing is now closed, and we'll open a regular meeting of the TSCC. Commissioners, do you have any added comments? No. All right. So then, Craig, would you please review any staff recommendations for certification?
Our role at this point is to present our comments and observations on the budget process TriMet went through and adherence to budget law. And as I said, the transition with Dee coming on board was seamless. We have no objections, nor do we have any recommendations about your budget process. It was done very well, so our certification letter will say that.
Well, with that, then, may I have a motion authorizing the commission to sign the certification letter as recommended by staff?
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. I forgot to ask for discussion, but I think I knew where that was going. So with that, thank you again. Our meeting is adjourned. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.